And to you, the British public, I know that there will be many people who are relieved, and perhaps quite a few who will also be disappointed. And I want you to know how sad I am to be giving up the best job in the world.
That's British PM Boris Johnson resigning. Well, I don't know about these politics. I don't know why. I don't know anything about it. So let's bring in our man, Oliver Lane, of course, with Breitbart News London. He's the bureau chief over there to break this down for us ugly Americans in a way we can understand. Oliver, why is Boris Johnson resigning?
Well, that's a good question. And a lot of people ask themselves that over here as well. On the face of it, taking the legacy media headlines, if you will, this is all about a sexual probity scandal that blew up in the UK Parliament last week. What this comes down to is a man called Mr. Pincher, nominative determinism in force there, you can decide that, who Boris Johnson elevated to a relatively senior position in his government to become a whip, as the office is called. It was consequently revealed that Mr. Pincher had some bad habits. He could drink too much and was known to grope people at parties. This actually happened last week. He admitted to it and stood down. The questions there were therefore, did Boris Johnson know about this before the guy got the job? And what sort of reflection does this have on Boris Johnson? Boris Johnson, of course, initially denied ever having known about it, and then walked that back just hours later, saying actually he had been told that this man had a proclivity to get a bit, touchy-feely, gropey, as it were, when he'd had a few to drink, but decided to give him the job anyway. And it's the fact that evidently he had in fact lied about knowing this that's caused this sudden resignation of his supporters, going out of the government from the cabinet. And it's that avalanche almost, I say almost, because while there's been a few big names who have gone, the vast majority of those, I think 59 to 60 individuals who've left the government in the past few hours, have been relatively minor characters. But nevertheless, it's been enough. I think the issue for Boris Johnson is that if he wants to stay in power, he's got to be able to sustain the government. And that means he's got to be able to fill cabinet seats. And if people in his government are leaving that quickly, he's simply run out of people to replace it. There's not going to be a government to run. And off he goes.
Okay, that was a great breakdown, but explain this to me. Maybe I'm just used to America's way of doing things. Our politicians now, they're all associated with scumbags. There's always someone getting busted who's close to a politician around here, and our politicians just lie about it or blow it off, and that guy resigns. Is this kind of the way it goes over there across the pond? If your best buddy you appointed turns out to be a dirtball, you have to resign, or is this abnormal?
Well, I think the distinct difference here is the volume of such scandals that we've had. So if you cast your mind back to December, January, this is really when it all started. And what we had was the Boris Johnson's rules on lockdowns. And what this means was during the coronavirus pandemic, the epidemic, whatever you want to call it, Boris Johnson threw the British people into one of the hardest, fastest lockdowns of any country on earth. And he created a system of rules that was so Byzantine, so complex, and he imposed these on the British people by force of law, using the police to enforce these rules. And yet he was unable himself to follow those rules. So you have the beginning of this sort of snowball scandal, if you like, in the UK, where it was revealed late last year, early this year, that Boris Johnson was not following the rules that he was enforcing on the rest of the British people himself. That's bad. Now, if you take my view on it, and I'm not saying you should, what's even worse than that, even worse that he was unable to keep his own rules, or at least he saw it as one rule for him and another for everybody else, was that he actually created these rules in the first place. When this man was making the pitch to become prime minister, he vaunted his libertarian credo. He said that he was a real conservative, was going to cut taxes, make the state smaller, and there he was, the first sign of difficulty. Creating these rules that were so fiendishly complex, no person in their right mind, no person with good faith could possibly follow them. And that's a terrible crime, really it is. But I'm afraid it got worse from there. So we had that initial scandal, so-called Partygate, where Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, was fined by police for breaking the laws he created. That's where it started. But actually since then, we've had a procession of other sometimes minor, sometimes not, scandals, and they're very often probity scandals. People with, peculiar sexual proclivities, substance abuse, money problems, etc. And the problem is, it's because of the way the Conservative Party works in the UK. These are people who are handpicked from the centre. These are, Boris Johnson's lieutenants, his handpicked people. So it's always coming back to him at the centre. And what we're looking at here is a situation where we have a member of parliament who was imprisoned just weeks ago for touching young men, underage men. And then as soon as that prosecution went through, one of his colleagues in parliament was instantly in there to defend him. And that really didn't go down very well with the public at all. More and more like this. So we reached the point where we are last week with this latest scandal, feeding into this week where it was revealed Boris Johnson had lied. And this is what I mean by this, this build-up of scandal, which leads us to the point where we are today, where Boris Johnson's at the podium saying, I tried my best, but it wasn't good enough.